Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla. This episode was a hot mess in my opinion, so we're going to do like last time and hit all the problems. But I'll also point out my favorite scene a little later, just so it's not a complete downer. I'm still looking forward to the next 2 weeks, and I hope they can give this thing the strong finish it deserves. Be warned, spoilers ahead. The episode opens to a flashback to a world called Aya, or possibly A1A. I couldn't quite tell because of the font. Anyway, Aya is where the Zhat Vash were born, apparently. It was created by a 200,000 plus year old civilization that has since disappeared, but managed to create and keep this thing running for all that time. The person we now know as Commodore O is instructing women, oh yeah, it's all women, no guys allowed in the Zhat Vash, it seems, that many of them will go mad once they touch this device because of what it will show them, but those who don't will become Zhat Vash. Narissa and Ramda are both there. We find out Ramda, the tarot card playing Romulan woman who was once a Borg we met a few episodes back, is Narissa's aunt, who raised Narissa and Narek after the death of their parents. So this glowy thing, or what I noticed was actually made of PVC pipe, because they forgot to add special effects to a few frames, or even better, the PVC pipe of knowledge as coined by Ryan Lands on the first reaction video Anti-Trekker and I did early this morning on his channel, is a storehouse of preserved memories. These memories the Romulan women are seeing are memories from a 200,000-year-old civilization. So how did they know what data would look like? How did they know what an Earth fox would look like? Speaking of which, I had the feeling they literally just Google image searched rotting fox, because I did, and it was indeed the very first result. Why is there a picture of a dead fox in a bunch of clips that are memories that are supposed to drive people mad? This mighty race didn't even bother to leave their name in the circle of knowledge. Not even an inscription or a plaque of some kind. O says they don't know the name of the race who built the PVC pipe of knowledge. Why does seeing a couple of planets blow up and a dead fox drive 8 out of 10 Romulan women to kill themselves, and one of them to go mad? The body count for this season is now 54. At the end of the flashback, only O, Narissa, and her aunt remain alive, though the aunt is clearly already disturbed. Back to the present day, and by present I mean of course back in 2399. Narissa tells her aunt that she's going to shut down this, quote, house of horrors, meaning the Borg cube that's been operating 16 years, despite becoming Zhat Vash only 14 years ago, and Commodore O doesn't learn about the planet of the synths until 9 years ago. So what was the initial purpose of this cube if it predates both of those events? Why would Narissa shut it down now? What about all the dozens, if not hundreds, of scientists from around the galaxy working there? Next, we see Elnor lost his ass-kicking powers because 7 needs to be the hero. As Elnor gets bested by some standard Romulan bad guys, 7 kills 3 with phasers, which gives Elnor a chance to kill 3 as well. And yes, the phaser deaths are confirmed in a future scene, so please don't tell me that blue means stun. That is confirmed not to be true now. Also, despite Elnor not using his sword, the other 3 Romulans he knocks down are also dead. So 6 to the body count, for an even 60. That was my guess for the entire season. Picard has round 2 with Admiral sheer fucking hubris Clancy, and despite finally giving him the squadron of ships he wants, it's not before telling him to shut the fuck up, like Picard is Wesley Crusher or something. Clancy tells Picard to head to Deep Space 12, and the fleet will meet him there. Spoiler alert, we get no starbase and no fleet of ships this episode, and I doubt we ever will. 7 gets to the Queen's chamber of the Borg cube, and all the controls are holographic. I should have brought this up last week, but didn't. Why do Borg need controls at all? All these functions should be happening through the Borgs already tied into the collective. They shouldn't need controls at all, let alone intricate holographic ones. Even worse, requiring a handprint to work. Isn't it lucky 7 still has hands? I mean, most Borgs aren't that lucky. Hugh didn't mention the hand requirement either when he said an XB was needed. Borg ships now apparently regenerate with the help of insect-like droid ships on the outside of the cube. In TNG, Voyager, and First Contact, repairs were simply made presumably by the Borg inside. While it looks cool, this is a major change in Borg tech. I can forgive this, though, since it's technically the most advanced Borg cube we've ever seen. I will give them props for actually spending a few dollars on a special effect, though. That is rare in this series. Soji and Picard are eating breakfast. Soji isn't sure she likes eggs and tells Picard he doesn't understand and doesn't know what it's like to not know if something is coming from her or her instruction set. While true, Picard isn't a synth. He was a Borg. He most certainly would have similar, if not identical, issues like trying to sort out what were his memories versus Borg memories. The one human who might understand her best is sitting across from her, and neither she, nor he, nor the writers remember that, because instead of saying that he, Picard, aka Locutus of Borg, can relate, he says he can only imagine, which is weak. Raffi goes to the bridge and takes an awkwardly long time to realize something quite obvious to the audience. She isn't talking to Rios, but one of his many holograms. As it turns out, she's talking to Enoch, the emergency navigation hologram, or ENH. Rios apparently locked himself in his room. The ENH lets slip Soji is recognized as a woman named Jana, but no further details are given other than it's obvious Rios recognized her the moment she beamed up. Rios got angry and unhelpful. He even told Picard he'd take him to his last destination of Deep Space 12, but that would be it. Raffi also asked the ENH about the 8 circles being drawn by the Romulans and shows them to the ENH. The ENH says it appears to be an attempt to draw an octenary star system, 8 suns. Raffi seems to think this may be the Conclave of 8, which her son previously mentioned was something Raffi was searching for, to the point she lost her family over it. To most people, the Conclave of 8 was just nonsense by a conspiracy theorist. Now Raffi knows she's getting closer to solving the mystery behind the Mars attack. Raffi meets the emergency engineering hologram, which I felt like we met before, but I'm not sure. His name is Ian, and he has a Scottish accent. A callback to the great Montgomery Scott, of course, who I will remind everyone may still be alive in the Picard era. According to Memory Alpha, Mr. Scott was born in 2222. Picard takes place in 2399. However, Scotty didn't age for 75 years while stuck in a transporter buffer until the 6th season of TNG in the episode Relics. Do a little math and Scotty would only have aged 102 years, which for the time is elderly but an easily achievable age. Picard is 95 and only at risk of dying because of his Irematic syndrome. Yes, the actor James Doohan died in 2005, but Simon Pegg, who played Scotty in the JJ films, is very much alive and could be aged with makeup without much issue. I'm not saying I want them to do this, but in fact Scotty would be my guess for the elusive Captain Crandall mentioned in the last episode as a mysterious former Starfleet captain who was, quote, even older than Picard. Scotty did have the title of captain in Relics and even before. Raffi tries to replicate some red wine in her quarters only to find out she's not allowed. The emergency hospitality hologram reminds her she blocked herself from being allowed to replicate alcohol in her quarters. She also blocked her ability to override and her ability to override the override. Why she simply doesn't replicate it from another replicator outside her quarters or find a bottle in Picard's Vineyard hologram, I have no idea. But it does give her time to talk to the EHH, and he explains that all 5 holograms have some sort of mental connection to Rios because he chose the self-scan option when setting them up. Rios did go in and make some targeted deletions, but it seems they all know part of the whole, with no one hologram knowing his full story at any given time. Speaking of which, I know there is a rumor out there that Rios is in fact a hologram himself. Heck, even way back in episode 4, before they beamed down to Freecloud in episode 5, I speculated that it could be fun if Rios was indeed a hologram. But after the events that took place on Freecloud, and more so the events in this episode, it would be incredibly disappointing if Rios turned out to be a hologram. I'm not saying we won't see a 6th Rios hologram in the future for whatever reason, but I don't believe even the Picard writers would try to pass off Rios as a hologram at this point. In Rios's quarters, we see a lot of mermaids. For those unsure why, remember the ship's name is La Sirena, which roughly translates to the mermaid from Spanish. Rios is clearly having a hard time after seeing Soji, who we learned looks like an identical mystery woman he knew years earlier as Jana. We see a drunk Rios go through a box of his old stuff from the USS Ibn Majid, which we can see a silhouette of on the box. It's clearly a heavy cruiser, though not quite a sovereign class, and its registry is NCC 75710. Remember from my episode 3 review, the first time we heard the name of the ship, it is presumably named after Ahmed ibn Majid, an Arabian navigator and cartographer from the 1400s. I don't have an issue with Rios having boxes of memories from his time aboard his old ship, but once again, the main thing he was looking for is a paper photograph. Worse, like all the photographs we've seen so far, it seems to suffer from the same cracks and folding issues photographic paper of decades past has. There has been zero improvement. And I get some of you out there still prefer paper to digital, but the majority of the developed world has already moved to digital photos. Heck, many people just keep them on their phones. And yes, I have a box of old photographs taken before digital was a thing, but I haven't had a new paper photograph developed in well over a decade. Even in TNG Track, when people wanted to look at photos, they'd go to a computer and bring them up digitally. I can understand if 1 or 2 characters had a fondness for old paper photos, but every single character seems to be keeping them around. It's just not believable. In this photograph, we do see Rios with his former captain, who we will soon find out is Captain Alonso Vandermeer. In addition to the photograph, there's a paper sketch of Rios with the woman who looks identical to Soji, but is, of course, the Jana, the ENH mentioned earlier. There must have been some soot in the air as Rios begins to tear at the sight of the drawing. We get a quick scene where 7 shows Elnor that there are still thousands of drones on the Borg cube compared to the small amount that have been recovered, aka the XBs. 7 says she could take control of them and make a mini collective limited to the 1 cube, and Elnor says she should do it, but 7 doesn't want to enslave them again, and worse, worries she may not want to give up the power once she has it. These concerns will be short-lived, however, next time we visit them. We get to what to me was the best scene of the episode. Raffi has gotten all 5 emergency holograms together in Picard's Vineyard hologram to talk to them. Don't ask who's flying the ship, I guess it really doesn't matter. Raffi gets all the holograms talking, starting with who Jana really was. They each know a little bit, and Raffi pieces everything together. Rios knew her from the Ibn Majid under Captain Vandermeer. Only the Spanish-speaking hologram Emmett seems to know the fate of Captain Vandermeer, which Emmett tells us without the need for words. Vandermeer killed himself with a phaser to the head. Raffi hits a dead end trying to figure out what happened to the Ibn Majid, and it turns out all records are classified. I will note Rios told Picard in an earlier episode that all records of the ship were in fact deleted by Starfleet, but gave no reason why. This shouldn't really be a surprise to Raffi. We see Picard standing above Jurati in sickbay, who has just woken up from her coma, which is extremely convenient timing. Jurati asks if it worked, to which Picard says the viridium in her system had been neutralized. I called it last week. This was not a suicide attempt by Jurati, just an attempt to stop the tracking device. Viridium is also the material Spock stuck to the back of Captain Kirk's back in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, and it lets Spock track Kirk even at large distances. At that time, however, it wasn't ingestible. Picard says Jurati must turn herself in at Deep Space 12 for the murder of Bruce Maddox. Jurati doesn't fight him, but does mention that Commodore O poisoned her mind and put in a psychic block that prevents her from talking about it. Of course, I'd consider her confessing this to Picard as indeed talking about it, so it doesn't seem like a very effective psychic block. Jurati asks Picard if he believes in hell. Without answering, Picard clearly gives the impression he does not. Jurati says she didn't either until she saw it. So the same visions we saw earlier of a planet or two being destroyed is now hell. Jurati confesses that she now thinks about suicide every day. This makes no sense, since the visions, even if true, showed everyone being killed very quickly. Entire planets exploding before anyone has a chance to panic. Why kill yourself now just because something might kill you later? It's not like the people we saw being killed were suffering. Seemed a quick enough way to go. Also, so much for that psychic block. Jurati adds hell will come again because of the hubris of people like Bruce Maddox, and they must destroy even the possibility of synthetic life to be safe. That's when Soji walks in and Jurati sees her for the first time. Raffi finally gets into Rios' quarters. Not sure if he unlocked the door or she hacked the lock. Regardless, she comes in and gets Rios a cup of coffee from his replicator and gives it to him. He seems receptive to talk. We see Rios is listening to a vinyl record, which Raffi mistakenly thinks is a Walkman. Raffi asks Rios about Captain Vandermeer, and Rios, who seems slightly surprised, says he used to think of the captain as his father. He even almost called him Pops a couple of times. Rios says he was shocked when his captain turned out to be a cold-blooded murderer. Out in the Vayt sector, they came across a small ship of unknown design with 2 passengers. An ambassador, a guy named Beautiful Flower. I assume he was probably picked on as a kid with a name like that. And his young protege, Jana, were beamed on board for an official first contact. Rios says they shook hands, they ate together, and a few hours later the captain kills both guests in cold blood. Vandermeer told Rios he was ordered to do this by Starfleet security, and if he disobeyed, the entire ship would be destroyed, and everyone on board killed. I must ask, if given such an order, could you see Captain Picard or Captain Kirk ever following it? To kill 2 innocent people at the threat of having their own ship destroyed? Because I cannot. If anything, the absurd threat would only make me question the legitimacy of the order even more. Not to mention, it is the ethical and moral obligation of Starfleet officers to disobey illegal orders. However, the writers really needed Captain Vandermeer to do this, so Rios could make him feel bad and give Vandermeer a reason to kill himself, which in turn would make Rios feel guilty. Rios then goes on to say that he himself had to cover up the whole thing, just like his captain was trying to do, so the ship didn't get destroyed. Rios also says he then notified the entire fleet that Captain Vandermeer killed himself for no reason. This now contradicts what Rios said in Episode 3 about the Ibn Majid being erased from Starfleet records. How do you announce the captain of a ship killed himself to an entire fleet, but you also erase the existence of the ship? You can do one or the other, not both. Rios goes on to say 6 months after the cover-up, he was out of Starfleet because of post-traumatic dysphoria, which the EMH hologram previously told Raffi was some kind of mental breakdown. He ends by showing Raffi the sketch of him and Jana, and saying when he saw Soji, it was the same girl they had come across that Captain Vandermeer had killed, identical even. Back in sickbay, a completely unrestrained Jurati has been left alone with Soji, who was previously told by Commodore O to destroy her, but she seems to have no problem resisting now. Jurati asks basic questions like if Soji eats and drinks and cries, and things like that, to which Soji answers yes to all. Jurati is excited over every little detail of Soji, but when Soji asks Jurati if Jurati thinks that she, Soji, is a person, Jurati does not answer. Soji says that she knows Commodore O told Jurati to kill her too, but Soji won't allow Jurati to get the opportunity to do so. Jurati assures her that now that they've met, she would never try to kill her or anyone else ever again. Back on the Borg cube, Narissa is ready to liquidate the Borg XBs because they aren't needed anymore. In just a few seconds, she kills 16. Yes, 16 XBs with 2 disruptors. She had to take a disruptor away from one of the guards because she needed the extra firepower. Good thing she did, since one of the 2 disruptors seems to malfunction, almost as if it was somehow jammed. Narissa apologized for breaking the guy's gun. This puts the body count at an incredible 76 for the season and 30 for this episode alone, making it by far the deadliest episode to date, and the number is about to get much, much bigger. Elnor points out to Seven that the lights are going out. The lights are the life signs of the XBs on the cube. Seven sees how fast they are turning off and realizes at that moment she has no choice but to take control of the cube. Seven initiates something and a bunch of tubes drop down and enter her back, right through her clothes and jacket. The special effects for this scene are the worst in the entire series to date, and looks like something a novice could duplicate with Photoshop after watching one YouTube video. The tubes cause Seven's eyes to glow green. So Seven doesn't have any human eyes, not even one? And her voice turns to that of the Borg Queen, and she says, "We are Borg." At that instant, all the thousands of Borg drones in stasis begin activating. Narissa tells the Centaurion that the time has come to kill the rest of the Borg. The Centaurion presses a button which causes the cube to open, blowing thousands upon thousands of drones into the vacuum of space. So my biggest problem is, why do Borg cubes have a door to open to space to potentially blow out literally every drone? It seems like a bigger design flaw than the Death Star. My second problem is that in First Contact, we saw the Borg could seemingly survive in the vacuum of space just fine. I'm not deeply upset by the fact exposing the Borg to space kills them. I'm really just trying to figure out how this will affect my body count for the season. Despite these being thousands of on-screen deaths, since I can't physically count them, I'll simply have to add an unknown value, making the current total on-screen deaths 70 plus X, where X is the number of Borg we see die in space. Whether X is 1,000 or 10,000 or more, I'm not sure. Anyway, back on the La Sirena, Soji helps Jurati out of sickbay and brings her to the main picnic table where Picard, Raffi, and Rios are already seated. Jurati announces she's going to turn herself in at Deep Space 12. They both sit down and Jurati goes on to apologize and says it's the first time she's had a crew in a long time, and with the second of 3 F-bombs of the episode also apologizes for ruining it. Rios gets up to use a replicator and comes back with peppermint and French fries. Soji is shocked he knew it was her favorite. So Raffi proceeds to put all the pieces together. 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, an advanced civilization moved 8 stars together and put a planet in the middle of all of them. On it, they placed a warning to future generations. Jurati says the Romulans call it the admonition. Raffi says it warns people not to do what they did, which was create synthetic life. Jurati says it evolved and it did not go well. Sounds like the Cylons. Picard says that these people believed there was a dividing line, a threshold of synthetic evolution, to which Rios equated to Zephyrin Cochrane's warp drive, after which the Vulcans showed up. Jurati says in this case, someone really bad shows up. Picard says the Romulans take this very seriously, which is the understatement of the century, and how they created the Zhat Vash to find and destroy all synthetic life. Except Data. I guess they didn't care about Data, or B4 for that matter. Raffi says, so like 40 years ago, Dr. Soong starts making synthetic life equal and in some ways superior to humans. That apparently was the reason the Romulans sent half Vulcan named O, who over the decades would rise up the ranks to become Commodore O, Chief of Starfleet Security. Once she became Commodore, she engineered a situation that would lead to the Federation banning synthetic life forever. So Jurati says the Romulans were behind the attack on Mars, and Raffi confirms. She goes on to say that O's work wasn't done. 9 years ago, a Starfleet vessel had contact from a strange new world. Soji remembers now that one of them was called Jana, but she doesn't know how. Raffi continues the 2 people on board the vessel were from the planet Bruce Maddox fled to after the ban to carry out his work. Because of this, the Zhat Vash have been searching for the planet ever since. Soji says the Romulans have now found this planet because of her. Soji gets angry, dents the table with her fists, and walks away. Before we get too far beyond this scene, this is where everything starts falling apart for me. Why didn't the Zhat Vash take out Soong early on if they knew he was working on androids? Why not take out Data once they knew he existed? Have they forgotten lore even existed? How did Maddox know this planet existed? Did the planet have synthetic life before Maddox got there? If not, did Maddox create presumably thousands of synthetics and they created their own ships and started traveling at warp, all within the handful of years between the Mars attacks and the encounter with the Ibn Majid? That's like 4 or 5 years. If so, why didn't he code them to steer clear of the Federation ships, knowing the Federation was anti-synth? If Soji and Dahj appeared human to every medical scan ever made, how is it that the Ibn Majid, and hence Commodore O, ever knew these aliens were synthetic to begin with? If the synthetic civilization existed before Maddox got there, then why did he need any part of Data? In either case, Dahj and Soji are no longer twins. There would have to be at least 4 of them, and I suspect hundreds, if not more. They said the Zhat Vash has been looking for Maddox ever since. Is that ever since the attack on Mars or the encounter with the Ibn Majid? In either case, the Ibn Majid encounter with Beautiful Flower and Jana was in the Vayt sector. Even if they somehow didn't get the location of the home planet during this first contact mission, which they should have, it's only one sector of space to search. How did it take them 9+ years to find the planet, only after a ridiculous plan to try to get the location out of Soji's dreams? It seems all those Romulan ships at the Cube could have been searching that one sector of space. Then there's questions about what happens if the synthetics are created. What is the bad thing that comes? Is it an alien race far more advanced, like Rios suggests, comparing them to Romulans who came after the first warp test? Or are the synthetics themselves the enemy? It's not clear at all. In fact, we get contradictory information, as if the writers don't even know what they're going for. And all I can think of is Discovery Season 2 that started off with 7 red signals across the galaxy. But as the season went on, the 7 signals had yet to appear, and then they had to wait for each one. This is the most unforgivable sin. Star Trek Discovery level writing. I have so many questions from this 3-minute scene that they would be hard-pressed to answer in 2 more seasons, let alone 2 more episodes. But worse, we know there can never be a satisfactory answer when they already contradict themselves within the same episode, let alone the same season. So there's still another 10 minutes left in this episode, but after all these issues, little of it matters. The short version is Soji takes over the ship and changes course. Instead of going to Deep Space 12, she somehow has a map of the Borg transwarp conduit network. I guess a part of it that didn't collapse in the last episode of Voyager. Soji hijacks the ship to get home faster, and her home is conveniently along the Borg network. More conveniently, Rios programmed in a failsafe that cuts power when he sings a Spanish lullaby his mother used to sing to him. Even more conveniently, Picard says, let's just follow Soji's plan anyway. Picard sits in the captain's seat and tries to fly the ship, only to realize he has no idea how to fly the ship with its holographic controls. Soji convinces Rios to use the Borg network to take her home. Back on the Borg cube, Narissa is headed somewhere, and the Centaurian following her is killed by XBs behind her, so she doesn't notice it at first. She turns around and starts shooting them with her disruptor, and kills 8 more XBs before finally being overwhelmed. However, as these XBs have no assimilation tubes, all they really do is touch and grab at her like zombies without fingers or teeth might attack somebody. It looks bad, but she doesn't really seem to be in any real danger, as she lays on the floor trying to kick them away. Despite being engulfed in XB, she and only she gets beamed out. Add a total of 9 more to the body count, bringing us to 79 plus X for the season, and a whopping 33 plus X for this episode alone. As a comparison, 33 was the total kill count for the first 5 episodes of Picard together. We're led to believe Narissa was beamed onto one of the many Romulan ships that warp away from the Borg cube, all of which are heading to Soji's homeworld. But we never get confirmation, so it's still possible something unexpected happened to her. Back to Seven, who has become a queen, and Elnor. Seven says the Romulans are gone and the cube is ours again. Elnor asks, almost enthusiastically, if Seven is going to assimilate him now. I don't think this kid understands what assimilate really means. I think he has it confused with a different thing. Seven, still in the Borg Queen voice, says Annika still has work to do. Annika, of course, being Seven's human name. The tubes disconnect from Seven's back, and she seems like she'll be okay. In fact, she doesn't even look like she'll need a new jacket, as the Borg tubes must have instantly repaired any holes they made when connecting to her spine. Finally, back on the La Sirena, Picard is telling Rios about how he remembers being an ensign on the Reliant and on Night Watch, and how he felt like he was the only person awake on the ship, and he loved it. Picard then goes on to tell Rios that he knew Captain Vanderdeer slightly. They talk about a mutual friend, and Picard asks Rios if Vanderdeer knew the people he killed were synthetic. Rios says he has to believe he did. It's the only thing that helps it make sense. Rios adds that he hates to think the captain died thinking Starfleet betrayed him, meaning since Commodore O was working for the Romulans, the order to kill was really from a Romulan spy, rather than a true Starfleet officer. Picard said he thought Vanderdeer was a good man and one of the best Starfleet had to offer, but Picard won't let Rios have this small amount of closure after all these years, and says, but Starfleet did betray him. Not now, Picard. Let the man get a good night's sleep for once. Nope. Picard goes on about how Starfleet betrayed themselves when the synth ban was ordered years before O gave the kill order. Picard is going off how fear is the greatest destroyer, and how they have tools like optimism and openness and the spirit of curiosity. It's like Picard learned absolutely nothing since the day Q snapped his fingers and sent the Enterprise D to meet the Borg cube. Nothing at all. Soji comes in to announce they finally made it to the Borg conduit. She does some stuff to the computer controls and takes out the compass Kestra gave her the last episode. The one and only reference to last week's episode, by the way. And the compass Kestra gave Soji was broken. This one seems to work, at least if there's a strong north magnetic pole coming from the Borg corridor. Mere moments after entering the corridor, what appears to be Narek's ship that had been following them in the previous episodes uncloaks and enters the corridor just behind them. If this ship could cloak, why wasn't it cloaked the entire time it was following the La Sirena? If it had been cloaked, presumably Rios would never have known he was being tracked. He would never have tried to lose Narek. And Jurati probably wouldn't have concerned herself that she was the reason they were being followed. It's like he didn't use the cloak just so he could make things harder on himself and give Picard and his crew a chance to win. End of episode, and it couldn't have come soon enough. 54 minutes and 6 seconds. Not as long as last week's, but longer than most. I don't know if it's related, but the episodes that are closer to 45 minutes, I tend to like a lot better, for whatever the reason. For all the inconsistencies, the breaks with their own canon, storylines and plots that don't make any sense, and literally forgetting what writers just a few episodes ago wrote, I must give this episode my lowest review yet. A 3 out of 10. And again, I still feel I'm being generous, because this is Star Trek Discovery level writing mistakes. I still hold out hope the final 2 episodes might save this series. By the way, when I went back to look at episode 3 to confirm some of the above, I remembered this part of my episode 3 review. The EMH calls for a med kit, which just appears out of nowhere. Rios, who's the pilot, the captain, I'm not sure what, calls for some type of Spanish alcohol. I can't pronounce it. And it just appears out of nowhere. I don't know, are these holograms? Are these replicators? It's like some state-of-the-art starship where you can just replicate anything you want, anywhere you want. You don't need dedicated replicators. You say, hey, I want a teddy bear, and boom, a teddy bear appears. So alcohol, med kits, presumably anything else could be replicated anywhere on the ship back in episode 3. Why then do they rely on going up to an actual replicator to replicate things from then on? In this episode, presumably Raffi could have replicated red wine anywhere outside her quarters. She could have replicated coffee for Rios once she sat down near him. And Rios could have replicated French fries and peppermint for Soji without ever leaving their little picnic table. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel, as well as my secondary channel, Berto Prey 5X. You can find the link to my secondary channel and many other things on BertoPrey5.com, your source for all your Berto Prey 5 needs. There will be more live streams happening on my secondary channel. Please remember to comment and like as well. What did you think of this episode? How can I improve my reviews? Let me know. Thank you all for watching, and Qapla.